Back when I was a real travel writer working for Lonely Planet, we were encouraged to avoid cliches. We were also encouraged to write about hidden gems and off-the-beaten-path locations, the places that the locals go. The idea was that people would get off the well-worn tourist trail and have a more authentic experience, maybe even blending in. I had my doubts about this, about embracing some cliches to avoid others, and about the concept of authenticity more generally. But Lonely Planet was by far the most important sounding writing project I had ever been involved with, and I decided to stick it out, not because of the pay, which was terrible, but because I thought it would eventually be a good thing to have on my resume. This was back in Madrid over 10 years ago. I worked for Lonely Planet for a couple of years, writing brief restaurant reviews and occasional longer articles, and taking photos for their website. When I moved from Madrid to Barcelona in 2018, it seemed logical to get off the beaten path immediately. I never did the typical Barcelona things like visit Sagrada Familia or the Picasso Museum. All this is why one of the first and overall the most popular episodes of this podcast is called Barcelona Like a Local. That is episode 6 if you would like to hear it. I stand by all the tips in that episode, and we're going to talk about some of those and more today. Hey everybody, it's Daniel. Welcome back to Spain to Go, the best podcast in the entire multiverse for all things Spain. This is episode 146. And I'm calling it Barcelona Hidden Gems. First up, I would like to take a moment to mention that I am now on Substack. You can go to spaintogo.substack.com and read this article, spaintogo.substack.com. There are a few reasons why I decided to move to a new platform. None of them are particularly interesting to your average listener of this podcast, so we don't need to talk about it. The expatmadrid.com blog, the Chorizo Chronicles, as it has been known for over 10 years, will still be there. It's not going anywhere, but I'm going to be doing some writing on Substack as well. So, Spain to Go, just like the name of this podcast, .substack.com is where you will find me. You could become a free or paid subscriber over there. If you become a paid subscriber, then you're helping out this podcast, similar to the donations that people have been making for the last few years. Of course, if you would like to make a donation, you can do that also. expatmadrid.com/donate to support this podcast. expatmadrid.com/donate. I appreciate whatever you want to send my way. Also, if you would like, I'm on Substack at spaintogo.substack.com. Thanks to everyone for listening. Let's get back to Barcelona's hidden gems. So these days I consider myself to be a true Barcelona local, and I stand by all the tips that I gave in episode 6 of this podcast. I also stand by the long section in the introduction where I talk about the futility of trying to blend in with the locals. As a 6-foot-tall bearded ginger, I might blend in with the locals if I lived in Scotland or Scandinavia. Elsewhere, it's just not happening. You may have some sort of Mediterranean DNA and look like a local across broad swaths of Europe. I don't. I also don't think it's particularly important to dress like the locals if you're just hanging out for a few days. People in Spain dress in shirts, pants, shorts, skirts, dresses, and shoes. Nobody's particularly worried about your outfit, especially in the major cities, so dress however you're comfortable. Here, without further ado, are my tips for having a better Barcelona experience. 1. Go to some local bars, the ones that aren't popular on TripAdvisor. They'll be cheaper and the food might be pretty good, or not, but it's a great way to absorb some local color. 2. Visit a beach that isn't Barceloneta, even if you have to catch the train. The beaches in Badalona are a lot less crowded, and there are plenty of other towns up the coast if you have time. If not, just walk from Barceloneta past the casino to the beaches at Bogate or Marbella. 3. Climb some of the local hills like the ones in Coisarola or the bunkers of Carmel. Or go nuts and do my whole Seven Hills route. Seven Hills is episode 88 of the podcast. It's a 3 or 4 hour walk across all kinds of off-the-beaten-path neighborhoods. Also, on the edge of town, Mount Tibidabo is not a huge tourist attraction, and the church on top is really nice. 4. More Raval and less Rambla. La Rambla is the famous tourist street going through the center of Barcelona. I barely even notice it. I cross it sometimes when I'm going somewhere else, because La Rambla actually sucks really bad. I'm a local at this point. I don't think a lot of locals hang out there. You have my permission to skip it and go off the beaten path to Raval. The Raval neighborhood is a unique experience. It has its own Rambla with a lot of Pakistani and Moroccan-owned businesses alongside it. There's the Contemporary Art Museum and a lot of small streets that you can explore in that area. It's not luxurious or anything, but it's different. And if I had to choose between Raval and La Rambla, I would choose Raval 100% of the time. Just don't get robbed. Finally, visit some of the lesser-known neighborhoods around Barcelona. That is the recommendation I would like to double down on in this episode, because there are a lot of lesser-known neighborhoods. If I were still a real travel writer, I would be obligated to call them hidden gems, but I'm just a guy with a Substack, so I'll call them whatever I want. In any case, while some people, a small but very loud minority, like to complain about over-tourism, I want to point out that Barcelona has 73 official neighborhoods. All of the tourism is concentrated in approximately 6 of those, which leaves a whole lot more city to explore. So yes, Barcelona is a victim of its own success where it comes to mass tourism, but they're all concentrated around La Rambla, Gótico, Born, Passeig de Gracia, Barceloneta, and Sagrada Familia. Outside those, unless I'm missing something here, there's not all that much tourism. Here in my current neighborhood, for example, we have a couple of hotels and a few tour groups leaving them in the mornings, but it's nothing disruptive. This is Barrio del Clot, about 20 minutes walking from Sagrada Familia. If I walk from my house towards Sagrada Familia, of course I end up in some very touristic areas in a short time. But if I walk in any other direction, it's just the regular Barcelona neighborhoods where the locals live, eat, and work. So now, let's talk about some of the hidden gem neighborhoods in Barcelona. These are the ones that I personally recommend for getting off the beaten path. Let's start with my neighborhood, Barrio del Clot. This is number 1 on the list, Barrio del Clot, where I live. Visit our market in the morning, El Mercat de Clot. You could have breakfast at the Bar del Mercat. It's an authentic local experience. Or come by in the afternoon for a vermouth in one of the surrounding streets. We've got a real local families living their lives type vibe, and it's great. Number 2. Fort Pienz, close to Arc de Triomphe. If you like Asian food, this is the place to go. It's not like London or anything, but locals often refer to this area as Barcelona Chinatown. My favorite Chinese restaurants are Yue Lai at Ronda de Sant Pere 45 and Wenju Dos, Wenju 2 in Roman numerals. That is at Calle Ali Bey 71. But there are dozens of Chinese restaurants around there. Some of them are good and some of them are not. That is part of the adventure. Number 3, Sarrià Sant Gervasi. This is a bit far off, but it's one of Barcelona's most upscale neighborhoods. You can also climb or take a bus up to Tibidabo from there and have a drink on one of the terrazas with a nice view of the whole city. Check out the Temple of the Sacred Heart of Jesus as well. I mentioned Tibidabo earlier, and I will have a bit more to say in a few moments. 4. Gracia and Villa de Gracia are Barcelona classics. They've got a bit more of a small town vibe, smaller buildings, etc., narrower streets. Lots of areas that are mostly pedestrian even though we're in the city. Just head up Passeig de Gracia until it narrows down after Diagonal. Up there you have a lot of smaller streets to explore, markets, bars, restaurants, and boutique-type shops. Finally, number 5. Pobla Nou is also worth a visit. It's Barcelona's old industrial neighborhood that's in the process of modernizing. I wrote a whole article about it on the other blog. It's also an episode of this podcast. Let's see. Episode 85 is about Pobla Nou. Some people like to compare it to Brooklyn. I was in Brooklyn several months ago, and I think Pobla Nou is better. Basically, you can just walk down the Rambla de Pobla Nou and see what's happening. There's a lot happening on the side streets as well. And the Rambla de Pobla Nou goes all the way to the beach. It's one of the less known beaches, which I suggested you visit a minute ago. Let's talk for a moment about the word Rambla in Barcelona, because the word Rambla refers to a wide street with a pedestrian area in the center, between lanes of traffic. There's the famous tourist street in the center called La Rambla, which actually has various names along its length. On the other side of Plaza de Catalunya, that becomes Rambla de Catalunya, which is much nicer and has a fair number of restaurants and luxury shops. Nearby, there's the Rambla de Raval, which I mentioned earlier. That has a completely different vibe with Pakistani and Moroccan businesses on either side. And there's a Rambla in Pobla Nou. There's also a Rambla de Guipúzcoa near Clot. And there are further Ramblas around Barcelona and in other cities in Catalonia. Now, I'm not saying that any of these hidden gem neighborhoods, Clot, Pobla Nou, Fort Piense, or Gracia, have the same charm as Born or Gótico, but they've all got something to contribute to a well-rounded Barcelona experience. And obviously, as I strongly suggest in several other articles and episodes of this podcast, visiting Barcelona for 6 days or 6 weeks is not really going to make you one of the locals. But that's fine, because you probably don't want to be one of the locals anyway. The locals, of which I now consider myself to be one, spend a lot of time dealing with things like Spanish bureaucracy, government incompetence and corruption, high taxes, low salaries, etc. It's not quite the relaxing vacation experience you want if you're just visiting on a 3-month tourist visa. That's about all I've got for today. I hope you are having a great day wherever you are in the world. I promised a little bit more about Tibidabo, so let's do that first of all. Fans of the TV show Friends have told me that Mount Tibidabo has a subplot in one of the episodes there. I am not particularly a fan of Friends, but I googled and it is true. Mount Tibidabo outside Barcelona. The subplot involves Joey, the character Joey, telling a story about hiking in the foothills of Mount Tibidabo and coming across a lake. Tibidabo is just a small mountain, or probably a large hill. There's no lake, so parts of this story are greatly exaggerated. Anyway, it is a real place. I recommend visiting the church on top, and also you can have a drink at one of the bars along the edge of Tibidabo. There's an area with a few bars where you have a whole view of the city. It's a bit expensive, but very nice. Another thing you should know about Tibidabo is that according to Barcelona legend, this is the hill where Satan brought Jesus during the temptation sequence in the New Testament. Tibidabo in Latin means, I give this to you, which from the Latin version of this story, in the original versions of the Bible, refers to the second temptation of Christ, where Satan takes him up onto a hill, shows him all the kingdoms of the world, and says, all this can be yours. So the name Tibidabo comes from that. It's a bit of Barcelona lore that you're probably not going to hear about on anybody else's podcast. So please like and subscribe. Head over to Substack and subscribe there. I am at spaintogo.substack.com. You could also donate some money at expatmadrid.com/donate. I appreciate all donors and multi-donors, past, present, and future. Thanks to you, I'm able to do in-depth research and spend the time writing this and recording it. If not, I would have to do something else with my time. So thank you for your support over at expatmadrid.com/donate. Nada más por hoy. I hope you have a great day and thank you for listening. Hasta la próxima. Bye.